Peace everybody, welcome to Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch, and today I'm going to recap this past Saturday's 154-pound boxing triple header. Tune in later on in the week where Rob will be taking on the World Boxing Super Series matches that are happening this Saturday. So let's get into the recap and talk about Lara versus Gausha, Lubin versus Charlo, and Hurd versus Trout. I'm going to start with the last one I named and work up because that's the way they fought on the card. So starting off with Trout and Hurd. Now this one was a pretty intriguing matchup because you had the old veteran versus the young upstart who is looking to make a name for himself in the division. This is his first defense of the IBF light middleweight super welterweight title, whichever one you want to call it, that he won in a vacant title matchup versus Tony Harrison. So coming into this, a lot of people, ourselves included, Rob and I, were thinking Trout would be able to use that veteran savvy, his accurate punching and effective movement to befuddle Hurd enough to get a decision on the cards. We thought Hurd would come on late, but it probably would be too little too late. Have a good rally at the end and fall short, leaving a very close decision loss on the table. We were incorrect in that. We got something similar. The result was just completely different. So when we start off, we see Hurd cutting off the ring well, making Trout work really hard, and we know he's very good at that because we saw that in his last fight versus Tony Harrison. He likes to be in your face. He's a very old school fighter, gives you old school looks. His movement, the way he has his hands, the way he moves his feet in the ring, is, if you watch a lot of old fighters, you see a lot of that in Hurd. And Trout he has that new school style where he's a little more economical with his punches, but making sure they always count. But early on, like I said, Hurd's making him work a little bit harder than he is used to, is in his face the entire time, and Trout makes an adjustment by starting to turn Hurd rather than just moving around the ring. And this becomes very successful in the early rounds. He's able to turn him, get some very accurate shots in. Unfortunately, they weren't affecting Hurd to the point that made him daunted in his efforts. He said it didn't matter what you threw at him, he was going to come forward and he was going to put that pressure on Trout. And he began landing the visibly harder punches. Even though Trout's had a good pop on them, they were nice and accurate, Hurd was walking straight through them and with no fear of consequence whatsoever. So much so that he began to just give up his footwork and his placement to just stay in Trout's face. Now, this is something you wouldn't want to teach somebody in the gym. You wouldn't want to teach them to give up their foot positioning or just charge in on someone. But in this case, it was working. So you get Trout, he's starting to get tired. He's getting hit with heavy shots. And you see him start to fade by about the 5th or 6th round. And that's when Hurd really starts coming on and starts landing some bombs on Trout, making his head snap back, making him visibly stunned with these punches that he's landing. And like I said, maybe if he keeps his slightly unconventional style but keeps his footwork together, maybe this doesn't work as well as what he was doing. Or maybe he ends up getting a quicker stoppage. We'll never know because what he did was working. All we have is what happened in the ring. We can't talk about what ifs and how comes and all that stuff. What happened was Hurd just stayed in Trout's face the entire night. So we got a very action-packed fight. We got a cut open up on Hurd over his, I believe, his left eye from a headbutt, unfortunately. but that still did not deter him. He just kept going, determined to get the stoppage. And as the fight wore on, 7, 8, 9, 10, he starts landing heavier and heavier shots. And you see Trout visibly getting more stunned, more shaken, and then his right eye starts to swell up, which is very bad in that orthodox versus southpaw matchup where your lead eye is pretty much going blind and you got somebody with the opposite stance as you teeing off on you. And we saw that in the 9th and 10th rounds where Hurd is just landing bombs on Trout, and you could see him getting dazed and stumbling around the ring, and it seemed like only a matter of time before Hurd would either get the stoppage or at least a knockdown. But at the end of the 10th round, the doctor and the corner decided that it was enough for Trout. Much to his chagrin, they ended up stopping the fight. So Hurd gets a 10th round stoppage in a very exciting fight. Not the most tactically polished. If you are I guess what people like to call a purist, that like to see just classical concrete mold, this is what boxing is supposed to look like type of guys, they probably weren't too impressed. But people who like results, people who like ingenuity, people who like adjustments, enjoyed this fight. I mean, you could still enjoy it if you were a purist, but there were some things that, you know, weren't conventional that were being conveyed in the ring that ended up being effective. Like I said earlier, you don't teach that stuff in the ring, but sometimes you gotta improvise and get the results, which is a win. And he didn't break any rules, so all's fair in this book. So let's move on to the highlight reel of the night, where we had Jermell Charlo facing Erickson Lubin for another portion of the super lightweight. I'm just all these different names for the weight. Super welterweight, junior middleweight. I believe Charlo has the WBC belt. Lubin in his first title shot. Both guys come out throwing their jabs. Lubin's on his back foot as the southpaw, so he's kind of leaning back, and he's kind of, at the moment, taking away Charlo's right hand. And so Charlo's trying to gauge the distance, and you see him kind of computing on that left hand that Lubin's throwing. The first time, lands flush. He's like, okay. Second time, he blocks it a little bit. Third time, he kind of steps back, tries to duck under it, catches a couple more. But you see him like, okay, I'm getting the distance on this left hand. And then he throws one, cracks him right across the top. It didn't really bother Lubin. He saw that one coming. He gets back to his stick, throwing that right jab, making Charlo a little hesitant in throwing, but looking for a counter. Charlo responds in kind of trying to throw a right hand. You see both guys kind of overextending with their power shots to get to their opponent. Lubin tries to counter with a right hook, misses, but they have to reset. They get back into it, and you can kind of see the computations that Charlo was making earlier. They pay off big time. About 30 seconds left in the round. Lubin comes in again trying to throw that left hand. Charlo meets him with an uppercut that he never saw coming, and he is out before he hits the floor. So the ref stops counting probably about a 6, sees that he can't get up, and but he stops it and he starts to get up, but he was in no condition to continue at that point. So it was a very good stoppage and an emphatic win for Charlo. He takes one of those young lions, even though he's a young lion himself, an even younger lion who's trying to become the alpha male in the division, kicks him off the mountain for the time being and makes him have to climb his way back up. So we'll see what happens next. He called out Hurd. That would be a pretty good fight between two young, hungry guys that are big, strong, have some flair in the ring and some technical skill. I would look forward to that matchup. So the main event, we get Terrell Gausha challenging Erislandy Lara for a portion of the WBA You know how they do. Rob and I always get upset even trying to start talking about the WBA. But Gausha, U.S. Olympian, first title shot. Lara, longtime title claimant. Cuban's amateur standout. We thought that this one might be the most tactically challenging and probably least entertaining fight of the night, and we did get that, unfortunately. But one of the things that really stood out was that Gausha let Lara outwork him. If you let Arislandi Lara outwork you, that leaves a lot to be desired for your output. But from a technical standpoint, you saw some of the deficiencies in the high guard defense, where you have your hands up here and you're basically like letting shots come around. You block those, you can kind of parry the ones coming straight down. But what both guys were getting hit with is when they ducked down, they were getting hit with uppercuts. One of which ended up dropping Gausha, I think in like the 4th round. I actually got it on right now as I'm filming this, you know, getting a few more nuggets as I do this recap. But other than that, we got a typical performance from Lara. He stayed in the pocket this time because Gausha never really gave him anything to take pause over, like we talked about in our preview video, where if you see Lara take some heavy leather, he will start to give up a lot of ground. He never got that worried from Gausha. He did do some good body work when he did let his hands go, but it was just too far in between outbursts to really cause Lara any type of trouble. Lara was able to pot shot him, counter him well with the counter left, and basically get a workmanlike decision. So no titles change hands. Maybe these guys can unify. We still got Demetrius Andrade out there as well with the belt. He was kind of on the outside looking in for this card. Maybe he gets one of the winners of this card. Maybe some of the winners come together and fight each other. There are matchups out there, and you still got some young guys who are coming up and some foreign veterans that are still out there that can challenge for these titles. So we got a pretty good division right now that has a lot of opportunity. That's very good. We like that. So the next thing is to wait and see how it all shapes up. So that's it for this video, guys. Hope you like it. Make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Hit the bell icon. Like I said, stay tuned for later on this week. Rob is going to drop a video on the World Boxing Super Series. And then next week, we got Anthony Joshua taking on late replacement Carlos Takam for the heavyweight belts that he owns. So we'll catch you guys in the Boxing Super Series video, and then we'll be back together to do the Anthony Joshua preview video. So until then, fight on.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming and cost. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick crime, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.